The message from my mother came at 5 p.m., just 4 words. Family meeting. 7 o'clock. Mandatory. I read it over and over like it was a sentence. No greeting, no hint of affection, just cold, like an administrative notice sent to an employee about to be fired. I knew immediately, whatever was waiting behind the door of house number 237 on Willow Street, it wasn't going to be good. And I was right. I'm Evelyn Monroe, the youngest daughter in a family where worth is measured by degrees, status, and total obedience to our parents. And me? I chose a different path. And the price I paid for that derailment was everything. The Mercedes SUV was parked neatly in the driveway, polished to a mirror shine that reflected the gray sky above. The lawn was perfectly trimmed, the white fence spotless like a painting. My family never tolerated mess, especially when it came from a child who never amounted to anything, like me. I stood in front of the heavy oak door, hand hovering over the doorbell. In my head, scenarios raced by. But none of them were as cold as what was about to happen. The door swung open before I could even touch it. "You're late!" My mother's voice was sharp as always. I glanced at my watch. 6:57 p.m. In my family, being on time meant you were late. Early was the standard. The living room was filled with an awkward silence. The soft yellow light tried to hide the tension that stalked the room. My father stood near the fireplace, back straight like he was inspecting a parade. My oldest sister, Amelia, the successful lawyer, sat in the front chair, leather briefcase placed precisely at her feet. Ethan, the medical resident, still wore his white coat, stethoscope around his neck like a constant reminder that he was out saving lives. Then there was Rachel, the beloved youngest, fresh off an MBA with honors, looking at me like I didn't belong. "Sit down, Evelyn." My father pointed at the single chair facing the rest of the family, like I was about to be put on trial. I sat down, trying to keep my voice steady as I asked, "What's going on? Why so formal?" Amelia opened her briefcase, pulled out a stack of papers, and spoke, in a voice as steady as a prosecutor. "We've discussed this thoroughly. This is a decision made in everyone's best interest." I took the stack and glanced through the densely printed pages. But a few phrases jumped out like blades. Termination of legal relationship between parties. Waiving inheritance and all financial ties. Severing all forms of contact. I didn't ask for clarification. I just whispered, almost as if I didn't believe it myself. "You're disowning me?" Rachel looked up, shrugging like I was being dramatic. "You embarrass the family, everyone says so." My father stepped forward, cold as a CEO delivering a termination notice. "You no longer align with the Monroe vision, you damage the family name." I laughed, a dry hollow sound echoing through the polished room. "I'm your daughter, how is this not personal?" My mother cut in, her voice still unnervingly composed. "We gave you the best education, introduced you to quality connections, and what did you choose? Crafting trinkets in some rundown workshop on the South Side? Gluing? Cutting paper? Like a child playing make-believe." I looked at each one of them. Blood relatives, I once thought would never turn their backs. But they already had. Long ago. I placed the papers on the table, my voice oddly calm. "Where do I sign?" The room fell silent. My mother blinked, stunned. "You don't want to reconsider, we can—" "No, just show me where to sign." Amelia pointed at the bottom of the page. "Sign here, and date it." I signed. My hand didn't tremble. 10 minutes later I stood up and walked out of the house I'd grown up in. For the last time. My father spoke without emotion. "We did this out of love, it's what's best for everyone." I paused at the door, turned to face them. Faces that once held me every holiday, now just hollow expressions. "The funny thing is, you're also afraid I'd ruin the family name. But not one of you ever asked what I was doing. What I've built? You never cared." My mother opened her mouth to say something, but I raised a hand to stop her. "No more, you've made your choice, now live with it." I left in silence. The door closed behind me. No tears, no apologies. My phone buzzed just as I reached my car, a notification from the business account. New order from Artisan Living, monthly revenue exceeds $80,000. I smiled, not because of the money, but because of what it confirmed. I never needed them to succeed. The late afternoon light painted the road ahead in gold, and I knew what awaited me wasn't ruin, but freedom. Freedom from judgment. Freedom to be myself. Freedom to begin an entirely new chapter. You did what? Tessa nearly spilled her coffee over the pile of recycled materials in my workshop. I looked up from the half-finished lamp and smiled, like it was nothing. I signed, quick and simple, took 10 minutes. Evelyn, they're your family. You didn't fight back? No questions? No anger? I set the pliers down and wiped my hands on the apron streaked with wood shavings and hot glue. I already cried over them, Tessa. Cried so much there's nothing left. Now, I don't have space in my heart for anger. There's only one thing left. Free. Tessa was the best friend I had. The first person who believed the random junk I made had real value. And Liam, my partner and marketing expert, suddenly burst through the door like he'd just witnessed a championship win. Evelyn, he shouted, holding his laptop like a sacred artifact. You have to see this. I raised an eyebrow. Liam never lost his cool. Unless it was big. He turned the screen toward me. Style and Home magazine. Cover, The Artisan Revolutionizing Sustainable Decor. Evelyn Monroe. I froze for 2 seconds. The cover photo was a portrait of me standing beside a chandelier made from recycled glass bottles and brass, hair tied up, glue on my hands, eyes full of fierce determination. This is real? I whispered. Not only real, it's going viral, Liam grinned. Social media is going crazy, the website crashed from too much traffic. Forbes just sent an interview request, and Business Forward, they want to feature you in a full, Creative Women in Leadership segment. Wait, when did all this start? Right after our first article went live 3 days ago. And it just so happened Style and Home picked it for the cover this month. Perfect timing. Tessa jumped in, eyes sparkling. Told you, nobody saw your potential until they couldn't ignore it anymore. I walked to the wooden shelves, looking at my creations. Lamps made from old aluminum spoons. Wind chimes from broken ceramics and vintage clocks. Once labeled junk. Now they're backordered for 3 months straight. We need to expand, Liam said rapidly. I'm in talks with 3 major home decor chains, they want exclusive orders. And the hottest news. MoMA wants to view your Fragments collection for their Art from the Wreckage fall exhibit. I froze. MoMA? The Museum of Modern Art? My heart pounded so hard it echoed in my ears. My phone buzzed again. Email from a MoMA representative, subject line? Formal invitation, Evelyn Monroe exhibit, inquiry. I laughed, this time a real laugh. From now on, we need more hands, I said, eyes scanning the production area. 2 more lead artisans, 1 person for online orders. And, Liam asked. A lawyer, I emphasized, to protect intellectual property. Before I could finish the sentence, my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I'd deleted. Rachel. Evelyn, I saw the article. What's going on? Call me. I smirked. Still polite. But no different from that command text the other day. The second message came from Amelia. We need to talk. You may not fully understand the legal consequences. Legal consequences? I scoffed. They were starting to panic. Liam looked at me, shaking his head. They don't know anything, do they? Not a single word. Tessa stepped closer. And now they're trying to come back. Just for the spotlight. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the banking app on my computer. This month's revenue had just hit $117,000. Not including the Singapore order still under negotiation. We're not stopping here, I whispered. This is only the beginning. 3 days later, a handwritten letter arrived. Sender, Howard Monroe, my father. I sat alone in the workshop. Afternoon light spilling through the window onto the cream-colored page. His handwriting was still clear, firm. Just like his management style at the car company he ran for 30 years. Evelyn. I read the article, and I saw what you've accomplished. If I said I wasn't surprised, I'd be lying. I want you to come home. Not to blame, but to talk. About the future, about family. Dad. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the letter tightly. I used to dream that one day my father would write me a letter like this. Just not after they erased me from the family registry. My phone buzzed again, an email from the creative director of Crescent Living, one of the biggest home decor brands on the East Coast. We'd like to place a $750,000 order for the Reclaimed Radiance collection. I closed the laptop and stood up. Not because I was thrilled, but because I knew the time to face them had come. And this time I wasn't coming back to apologize. I was coming back as the person they once threw away, and now had to see in a whole new light. I stepped out of the workshop, sunset casting long shadows on the gravel path. In my hand was the sketchbook for my next collection, titled Resurgence. Family dinner. Sunday, 6 p.m. Everyone present. The message came from my mother on Thursday morning, with an exclamation mark at the end, like a command, not an invitation. After 2 months of complete silence since the night they disowned me, I should have felt touched by their openness. But no. What I felt was the stench of opportunism, stronger than the smell of oil paint in the studio. Liam saw the message and whistled softly. That was fast, less than a week since the Forbes interview. Tessa scoffed, still sanding down a wooden lamp frame. Let me guess. They suddenly remembered Evelyn because she was on national TV and just signed $1 million deal? I didn't answer. I knew my family better than anyone. They never call unless they want something. And this time, I had a feeling they wanted a lot. Sunday evening I arrived 10 minutes early, partly to set the tone, partly to see how they'd react when I was the one in control. The house was the same, only the air had changed. When I walked in, my mother was already waiting at the door. Evelyn. You're here. I didn't hug. I didn't smile. You said 6, I'm on time. Inside, my father sat at the head of the table, looking more worn than the last time I saw him. Salt and pepper hair slightly unkempt. Dark circles under his eyes, from either lack of sleep or worry. Amelia was ready with a folder. Ethan was glued to his phone. Rachel pretended to read a book, but clearly wasn't absorbing a word. Have a seat, my father gestured, his voice no longer as commanding. I sat down, arms crossed. So, family dinner. What's tonight's agenda, or did you just invite me here for a group confession scene? My mother tried to smile. You're still as sharp as ever. I'm still the person you signed away in case you forgot, Mom. The air in the room thickened like cooled glue. Amelia spoke first. Evelyn, we shouldn't start with hostility, we're here for a serious discussion. I leaned back in my chair. Good, what are we discussing, this year's Christmas gift list, or the revival plan for the car company that's about to go bankrupt? Ethan looked up, pale. Rachel swallowed hard. My father stared at me. So you know. I nodded slightly. I have my own financial advisors, they track the market closely. And your company is currently being squeezed by the bank. Short-term debt exceeding working capital by over 40%. Isn't that right? Silence. Only the ticking of the clock echoed, heavy and slow. My father took a deep breath. Traditional dealerships are being pushed out, consumers are shifting to electric. We've fallen behind. That's unfortunate, I shrugged. So you didn't invite me back out of love. You just want to use my public image and media network to save the family legacy. That's not true, my mother said, her voice catching. We miss you, family is still family. No, I looked straight into her eyes. I'm only family when you need a pretty face to plaster over the cracks. Amelia gently pushed a folder toward me. We've drafted a proposal for collaboration, You would be appointed creative director for the transition to electric vehicles, using your brand to rebuild Monroe Motors' image. I didn't touch it. And I assume the profit-sharing offer is generous? You'd get 20% equity. I let out a sharp laugh. I used to hold 25% as inheritance, remember? But you forced me to give that up with a cleverly designed contract. We didn't understand the scope of your work back then, Rachel said softly. It wasn't that you didn't understand, you didn't want to, I cut in. You saw I was different, so you labeled me a failure. My father placed a hand on the table, his voice low. Evelyn, if you help us, we can start over, the family can rebuild together. I stood, looking at each face in the room. No. I'm not doing together with people who mocked me for glue guns and scrapwood. I'm not starting over with those who abandoned me just because I didn't fit the mold. My mother reached for my hand. Eyes glassy. We were wrong. But can't you give us one chance, just one? I gently pulled my hand away. It's not that I can't forgive, I just don't forget. And I'm no longer the girl who used to sit quietly through these dinners. Amelia opened her mouth to say something, but I'd already turned away. I'll think about it. But if I return, it will be on my terms. No orders, no control. I walked out of the house I once called home. On the drive back, I turned on the radio. Katy Perry's Rise was playing, right at the chorus. Don't be surprised, I will still rise. I placed the leather portfolio on the conference table at Riverton Plaza Hotel, the location I chose for our family renegotiation. This time, no dinner table, no evening meal, no sugar-coated intentions. Just white lights, black leather chairs, and pages about to become the biggest turning point of their lives, if they dared to sign. But Amelia, Ethan, Rachel, and my parents walked in. Each carried a different expression: tension, fatigue, hope, but above all, need. Let's begin, I said, not waiting for them to settle. I opened the draft proposal in front of me. This is the full restructuring plan for Monroe Motors. Amelia took a deep breath, as if she sensed the verdict about to be delivered. I spoke each word clearly and deliberately. I'll agree to join the plan to save the company, but only under the following conditions. My mother shifted in her seat, about to interrupt. I raised my hand to stop her. No one interrupts. I've heard more than enough. Now it's your turn to listen. The room fell silent, only the steady hum of the air conditioner above our heads. First, I'm the CEO, full executive authority, no veto votes from the board. Dad will hold the title of honorary chairman with no executive power. My father squinted, as if someone had slapped his pride. Evelyn, I founded this company. Exactly. And you also nearly destroyed it. If you still want it to survive, this is the price. I turned to the next page. Second, every family member will receive benefits, including salary, shares, or bonuses, based solely on actual contributions. No more of Rachel receiving a six-figure salary for internal media support, without doing a single meaningful day of work. Rachel lowered her head, offering no argument. Third, and this is the most important, this toxic family dynamic ends here. I looked around the table, at each of them. No more demeaning differences. No more suffocating dinners because someone lives outside your expectations. No more snide remarks masked as polite smiles. If anyone can't do that, get up and leave. Now. I closed the folder and tapped my pen against the table. The choice is yours. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, my father broke the silence. He stood up and walked toward me. For the first time in my life, I saw his shoulders slump. Evelyn, I was wrong. I let my ego and reputation blind me to the truth. That you're the only one among us with the courage to follow your passion to the end. I used to think sustainability was childish, a passing trend. Now I understand. It's the future. He paused, looking me directly in the eyes. I'm proud of you. I didn't blink. I didn't accept or reject. I just remembered every word. Amelia pulled her chair closer. I'm the one who drafted the disownment papers. Not because I hated you, Evelyn, but because I was jealous. You dared to fail, dared to be laughed at. I only knew how to live by others' expectations. She slid the contract toward me. I'll sign. No conditions. Ethan scratched his head, speaking slowly as if each word scraped his pride. I used to think you were weak, a dreamer. Now, if half my patients had your willpower, they'd be healed by now. Rachel sighed, her voice cracking. I'm truly sorry. I know I said awful things. I just couldn't handle the fact that you became everything I wish I was allowed to dream of. My mother, silent until now, finally spoke. I lost you once, Evelyn. I don't want to lose you again. If these are the terms for your return, I'll accept them. I don't need a title. I don't need shares. I just want to hear you call me Mom again. My throat tightened. Not from emotion, but because the thing I'd longed for my whole life, recognition, was finally being given. For the first time. Without conditions. I pulled out my pen and underlined the final 2 lines of the document. Commitment to maintaining a healthy work environment, respecting individual values, and ending manipulative behavior within the family. I handed the pen to Amelia. You go first. She signed, then Ethan, then Rachel, then my parents. I signed last. Setting the pen down, I looked up. Now, we can start over. But let's be clear. I'm not doing this to repay anyone, or to prove anything. I'm doing this because I want to rebuild something that's actually worthy of the effort I've put in. My father nodded without resistance. Welcome home, Evelyn, he said. I shook my head. No, this isn't coming home. This is me building a new home, and this time, there's no room for lies or prejudice. No one replied. But they didn't need to. This time, I knew they understood. The Monroe Motor sign came down on a gloomy Tuesday morning, as early winter winds whistled through the worn-out lot like distant sighs. No one cried, no one clung to it. Because that name had been dead for a long time, we were just now brave enough to admit it. A week later, a new sign was raised. Phoenix Electric, Sustainable Luxury Vehicles. Beneath the gleaming letters was a logo of a phoenix rising from the ashes. I stood in the midday sun, looking at that symbol and smiling, not because of victory, but because I could finally breathe with my own lungs, no longer choking on the rot of false expectations. Inside the showroom was a whole new world. Sleek electric cars lined up beside pieces of recycled art. Chandeliers made from old exhaust pipes. Coffee tables from scrapped wheel rims. A phoenix sculpture crafted from shattered glass and charred wood. Each piece was a story. A fragment of memory. A punch to the pain and also a hug to myself. Liam walked in, holding a tablet, his face unable to hide his excitement. Breaking news, the homepage just crashed, from traffic after the ad launch. And, Evelyn, you might want to sit before I read this. I crossed my arms. Just say it. I'm not the fainting type anymore. MoMA has officially confirmed, your Peace family is being added to their permanent collection. Not just the fall exhibit, permanent. Evelyn? I closed my eyes for 2 seconds. Partly from shock. Partly because the emotion hit me like a midnight tide. Family, my most beloved, most painful work, was made from the ashes of the disownment letter, fused with recycled glass. I had melted it all down, the shame, the judgment, the tears, and turned it into a sculpture of 3 hands intertwined. An imperfect symbol, asymmetrical, but vivid and painfully honest. Tessa, who helped me build our first workshop in that broken-down garage, was now head of the art division at Phoenix Electric. She walked over, holding a new draft design for the Second Chances collection. Did you ever think, one day, we'd build an empire out of what people threw away? I laughed. No, I thought I'd die alone with a glue gun and scrap wood. Tessa laughed too, then looked at me. And now you're running one of the first artistic EV showrooms in the state, about to open a second location, and on the cover of the New York Times next week. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. Internal shareholders meeting starts at 3 p.m. I'll speak first, then hand it over to the CEO. I read the message. Neutral, respectful, not controlling. I replied, 3 p.m. I'll be there. And I'm bringing family with me. The second-floor conference room was filled with sunlight from the large windows overlooking the renovated lot. Everyone was already there. Amelia organizing documents, Ethan standing by the presentation board, Rachel on a client call. My father, now honorary chairman, stepped up to the podium. Phoenix Electric is a symbol of rebirth. And the person leading that rebirth is Evelyn, my daughter, and the company's CEO. He paused, eyes on me. And if I could go back in time, I would choose to believe in you from the very beginning. I stepped forward and placed a velvet cloth on the table, then uncovered it. Inside was family. The room went silent. This is made from the ashes of the letter that disowned me, fused with broken glass from the old factory. This piece went from trash to a museum. And just like it, this company was once ashes. I looked around the room, my gaze steady. I didn't save this company to get revenge. I saved it to prove that what's been discarded can rise again. And this time, we won't let history repeat itself. Applause filled the room. For the first time, genuine. The following week, at the grand opening of our second branch in Seattle, I stepped out of the newest electric model, Nova X, with its minimalist design and eco-friendly paint finish. Behind me stood a wall designed to resemble falling ash, where each guest wrote the name of someone who once doubted them, then burned it and added it to the recycled glass furnace. The next piece will be called Forgiveness. My father arrived late, but he brought a small box. Inside was the first newspaper that mocked me. Eunice Monroe, daughter, a failure with no way out. Now yellowed, creased with age. I figured you might need more material for the kiln, he said. I looked at him and nodded softly. You brought exactly what I needed, thank you. He smiled. A real smile. Gone was the man who once slammed the door when I spoke of gluing scrap metal. That night, I returned to the main workshop in Denver. The lights were off except for the glass kiln glowing red like a heartbeat in the dark. I placed family on the highest shelf not to display it but to remind myself that every drop of sweat, every cruel word, every crack in my heart, helped shape the ground I now stand on. I no longer need praise. No more press. No more validation. I have myself. And this time, I don't need permission to be me. On the day of the grand opening of the Community Arts Center, the Ember House, it rained lightly in Denver. Raindrops slid quietly down the large windows of the newly completed building. Once an old Monroe Motors parts warehouse, now painted ivory white and finished with recycled brick. I stood at the front door, holding a wooden plaque engraved with the words, "Where cracks become creations." No elaborate ceremony. No red ribbon or confetti. Just me, the team, a few first students, and people I never thought I'd share a roof with again. My family, in a new form. My father stepped forward, more silver in his hair but far more peace in his eyes. You really turned what used to be a junk room into a home for the soul. I nodded. Because broken things are where creativity begins. Amelia now heads the legal division at Phoenix Electric, and was the first to propose the Create to Heal program, offering underprivileged youth training in recycled arts. Rachel, after stepping away from marketing, returned to her passion for photography, and now documents the creative process to inspire others. Ethan is still a doctor, but on weekends he teaches his patients wood carving to help with anxiety and recovery from depression. No one clings to titles anymore. No one fights for a spotlight. Everyone is simply doing the work, with their hands and their hearts. At the press conference after the launch, a young reporter raised her hand. Miss Monroe, what's the most important thing your family learned from that time? I didn't hesitate. That blood isn't enough to make a family. It's who chooses to stand with you when everything falls apart. Behind me, my father bowed his head. My mother dabbed at her eyes. Rachel squeezed Amelia's hand. No one said a word, but the truth was clear in their eyes. We had lost each other once. And this time, we wouldn't let it happen again. After the ceremony, I returned to my personal workshop, still carrying the scent of wet wood and glass furnace ash. Tessa was bent over the frame for our next project, unspoken, inspired by all the things we never dared say in our family. I saw Rachel smile at Amelia, she said, first time in forever I've seen her eyes without jealousy. I placed my hand on the table, looking at the rough cuts made by a 14-year-old boy in our trial program. Because now everyone has their own path. No one needs to shove their way into someone else's anymore. Tessa looked up and smiled. What do you think truly made you different from them? I paused. I didn't give up when they called me a burden. I didn't trade my dream for approval. And I didn't seek revenge, even when I had every right to. She nodded. So you didn't just rebuild a company. You redefined what family means. 2 months later, Family, the sculpture made from the ashes of my disownment, was invited to be the centerpiece of the reclamation exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum. I sent the piece with a short note. Sometimes, forgiveness needs no words, just action, honest enough to fill what was once missing. My father, leaving Denver for the first time in 6 years, accompanied me to New York. On the flight, he said something that made my throat tighten. I used to think success was about controlling everything, but turns out, success is knowing when to let your child do it themselves, make their own mistakes, and stand up on their own. I turned to him, my voice soft. And I think the real miracle is when a family can learn to love each other again, like strangers choosing to trust once more. At the exhibit, I stood beside family, watching visitors bow their heads in silence. A brown-skinned boy, about 10 years old, tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, is that statue really made from ashes, like the ashes from our fireplace?" The mother smiled, whispering something I couldn't hear. But in that moment, I knew the piece wasn't just my symbol anymore. It had become a whisper for hundreds of broken hearts, quietly searching for a new shape. That night, I returned to my hotel room and opened my laptop. The Ember House website had just received a $100,000 donation from an anonymous organization with a note attached. For the children who were cast aside, so they know they're not invisible. I stared at those words, overcome by a feeling I couldn't quite name. No bitterness. No regret. Only a deep, quiet gratitude that I had once been thrown out of the circle of blood, only to redraw the boundary of love on my own. Today, Phoenix Electric is a leading brand in sustainable electric vehicles. The Ember House has opened 2 additional branches in Seattle and Austin. Each month, hundreds of children come to learn how to heal using broken bricks, shattered glass, and scorched copper wire. Every piece they create is a declaration that destruction is not the end, but the beginning of something else. And my family, those who once caused the deepest hurt, are now companions on this journey, willing to listen, admit their faults, and relearn how to love. I no longer need them to prove anything, but their presence beside me, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, is proof that the greatest miracle isn't becoming someone important. It's turning pain into something beautiful. I stepped out onto the balcony, looking at the shimmering city beyond. I was once discarded. Once stood alone. But from those ashes, I built a home. Not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been rejected, ever been called different. Family, turns out, is where you're accepted, even before you're perfect. Evelyn Monroe's story is a powerful reminder that being different is not failure. It's strength waiting to be recognized. Once disowned for refusing to conform, she rose to become a symbol of creativity and rebirth. Evelyn didn't just build a successful business, she rebuilt a broken family through persistence and forgiveness. She reminds us that true family is made of those willing to own their mistakes and choose to begin again, from the ruins of what once broke them. What do you think about Evelyn's journey and the rebirth of her family? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, inspiring stories about life and family.